Hi, everyone, and welcome to part two of my YouTube video with Kristina Kyser today. She's very graciously joined us to speak about hypnosis and what it's like to go through a past life transformation regression. We spoke about her past life with Sarah being in an institution in our first video, and today Kristina has been gracious enough she'd like to share another life that she experienced. How are you doing today, Kristina?
I'm doing well, thanks. Anita, how are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited that you've come to talk to us about another part of your session, because this is the really fascinating part of the session. Not that the first one wasn't, but this one's really great too. So you had an ET experience. And why don't you tell us in your words what happened in that part of your session?
So in that part of my session, I was shown initially a very, very, very tall, narrow structure that I did not recognize. I'd never seen a structure like that. And as we stayed with it, it became clear that it was some kind of communication, sort of transmission and reception tower. And as you were asking me questions about who I was, it became clear that I was not human. So this is one of the parts in the session where I became more aware of my conscious mind and my so there being a little bit of tension between what was coming in session and where my conscious beliefs and my comfort levels are. So that made it quite fascinating. But yes, so we were able to ascertain that I did not seem to be either human or even carbon based. And I don't think we got to actually identifying what exactly or who exactly I was, but we did get a sense that I was performing a function, delivering information to a council that was occurring.
Yes, and you had a very difficult time trying to ascertain what you were.
Yes.
So what did you experience? Like, how was that feeling? I recall you saying you didn't feel carbon based.
Yes, and I think, like, again, there was this sort of tension between what was coming through and almost feeling like I couldn't translate. So almost feeling, and I think I mentioned to you at some point, it's like my mind is grabbing for what it can comprehend. So there were like sort of Star Wars characters coming to mind, but I knew that was kind of an approximation. It was a way of translating the information I was receiving in a way that could be assimilated or could be familiar enough to make sense to me. So I did have a sense of a form, but it wasn't a material form or a carbon-based form in the same way that we are accustomed to looking at other living beings.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So, how did it feel to receive this information in your experience in your session? Like, how did you process this?
It's fascinating. I mean, on the one hand, and again, this reminds me in some ways of my channeling experiences, like what's coming through, sort of the vibe of what's coming through is incredibly positive and sort of clean. And then there's what's happening as I'm trying to assimilate it. So certainly my rational mind is dialed down during hypnosis, obviously, but I am feeling some of that tension of how to language it, first of all, like to stay in dialogue with you, and then how to make sense of it. So that's the part of the session that really activated more resistance after the fact, and that I was more reluctant to go back to and listen to, because I think it caused some sort of disarray for me in terms of how I was going to assimilate this information.
Did you ever have any previous experience, ET experience with anything? See anything, channel anything?
So I had some exposure to some texts written, channeled from the Pleiadians, and I had received some messages from them that I was in contact with them as a child. And so this was something that I went through periods of it feeling like receiving that information was a tremendous relief, and it sort of filled in the blanks for me. it helped things make sense in a way that they didn't make sense before. And then I would sort of move away from it. And I think the dominant thing that makes me move away from it is this feeling of longing to be quote unquote normal, right? And a feeling that this information sort of takes me further away from other people, or sort of, yes, isolates me or takes me into a different category, a different group.
Right. Yeah. Yes, a sense of belonging, right?
Yes.
So did any of the ET experience in hypnosis relate clearly in your life today?
So there were three components. There was the one we just mentioned, where I was delivering a message to a large council, where we couldn't exactly identify exactly who I was. Then there was a past life in Lemuria, and then there was information about ways in which I have been in communication in this lifetime with ETs since being a child. And so, sorry, I've forgotten your original question.
My question was, did the ET experience relate to something clearly
Yes.
in this life, right?
So it related to a few things. It related to a sense of not quite belonging, a sense of being resistant to most of what I've been taught about Earth and about human history, and feeling that there's something missing from the majority of the narratives that are sort of accepted. Feeling deeply drawn to science fiction and fantasy, and feeling in many cases that what is considered fiction actually resonates as a deeper truth than what we consider realism. And I think this sense of being a communicator, being a translator, an explanation of certain ways of seeing myself as a child that just clicked. It felt like it was a missing piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it was another bridge that was gapped for you.
Yes.
Very much like the Sarah experience, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
because often, I mean, I've been through hypnosis myself probably about 30 times, and in my training and mentorship. And it's extraordinary the way that you go through life and there are things that never really make sense to you.
Yes.
You know, you have certain passions or certain dislikes, but you don't understand why. But as you experience your lives and hypnosis, things start to go into place.
Yes.
And I think that's what you experienced with those two different scenes, was real pieces of your life puzzle coming together.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, did you see yourself in the being you were on the planet and Lumeria? So you sort of went into two different sections. You were this carbon-based being, and then you landed up very clearly in Lumeria. And the Lemurian experience was it's a cross connection between these two different types of beings. Do you recall what came out of the Lemuria experience?
My dominant sense of that experience was a tremendous amount of light, like a very, very high vibration, very harmonious, very beautiful existence. So just a tremendous amount of life. None of the kind of weightiness of sort of human existence on Earth now. It was very beautiful. It was a very transcendent experience.
Nice. Okay. So, does it feel clear to you now why you're being channeled? Did that experience help you to clarify why you're sort of getting these channels and what your messages are about?
It clarifies some of my life path in terms of the intensity of some of the obstacles that were placed before me, the need to kind of form a pathway out through those obstacles, and the way in which the human predicament or the human movement, the human awakening out of trauma, out of the cycles of history, is of significance on a much vaster scale than we usually think it is. So we are being watched, we are being supported, we are being communicated with. And what is playing out on Earth is of significance to the cosmos. So it's sort of, it's very hard to put a lot of this experience into words, but it's sort of, it contextualized some of my individual experience as part of a larger understanding.
Mhm.
It helped make sense of some of the suffering. It helped make sense of some of that feeling of, not quite being here as a child, like really being elsewhere. And since then, there's been more information about specific examples of when I was in communication and where I was in communication.
Mm. Okay. So, Christina, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about your background and sort of your career and what has led you up to this to sort of help the people understand. You do offer services, and we want to talk a little bit about that. So, if you could give people out there some information, like who are you and what you've done, because you've had an extraordinary career up until this point.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I began my career as an academic, so I did get a PhD in English literature, and I taught at the University of Toronto. And then I transitioned into training as a psychotherapist. So I practiced as a psychotherapist, trauma-informed psychotherapy for 13 years.
Mm.
And at that time, I was also a teaching therapist, supervising other therapists. And I was also on a spiritual path. And so increasingly, I felt called to work sort of outside accepted paradigms and to begin to allow what was happening, the transformation that was happening spiritually, for me to be a sort of a container for and a dominant force in my work. So now what I do is I facilitate a particular kind of meditation that helps people not only achieve a physiological shift, but enter into that sort of that magical space, that theta brainwave space where we can open to our intuition, our heart intelligence, our higher self, and open to spirit, receive guidance. And I also offer one-on-one channeling sessions, and I also run day-long retreats in Toronto, spiritual retreats in which meditation and group process and channeling are all a part of that process. And what I'm finding is that what can happen in a group of people who are coming together with this common intent of transformation, awakening, healing, it's incredibly powerful what can happen in these groups. So in the new year, I'll be moving towards offering longer retreats in different destinations. And in the fall, I'll also be offering an online course, which combines a lot of psychotherapeutic healing principles as well as meditation practices and spiritual practices.
That's great. It sounds really exciting what you're doing.
Thank
So,
you.
what I'll do for the audience is I'll put Christina's links down in the description box below, and they can go onto your website and they can see the retreats and all the stuff that's going on. And then you have some dates coming up from July 21st, and you've got different meditation retreats one day going all the way up through the end of the year, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go down into the description box and you'll see the website and dates. And you can check out Christina on Instagram as well. And you can check her out for her daily posts. I think you're posting daily, right?
Almost daily. Yes.
Okay. With just great little, words of inspiration and, I guess probably what's going on that day because we're experiencing so much transition and awakening, and we all have our good moments and our bad moments. So
Yes.
go to Christina for some encouragement.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you've really made like a 180-degree turn in your life. So was there one aha moment that just said, "Okay, I'm not going to do all this now," and I'm just like you've made a really big turn. So was there a quintessential moment that you felt there was time to make a change in your life?
I would not say there was a one moment. I would say it has been a gradual because my spiritual path has also taken many turns through Buddhism and shamanism and many different forms of meditation. And I've had many teachers. Um, I would say that, as for so many people, 2020 was really a kind of a pivot point, like a breaking point. in terms of my disillusionment with all the existing institutions in our society and psychotherapy and the way in which it has sort of upholds individualism and in some ways, has other characteristics that make me uneasy. So sort of also just the call to be more of my full self, which in many ways that professional identity did not permit for. So to return to, ways of knowing that feel more authentic, feel like a much deeper and broader way of being in relation to other beings on this planet, right? That intuitive knowing that has been so suppressed and so so downgraded.
Hypnosis session help you to understand where you wanted to go with your healing? Was there something about you experienced a lot of different things in your session? So did you feel that session helped you move in the direction that you needed to move?
Yes, it certainly connected some dots in terms of making sense of experiences, like grounding those experiences in a deeper context, validating, sort of the emotional remnants, validating some of the dissonance or the unease that I felt with sort of dominant ways of explaining or seeing the world. So I would say it was tremendously validating. I would say that it helped sort of bring down the intensity of the reaction that I was experiencing, which, we talked about in my first interview. So yeah, it was very much like puzzle pieces that I'd been missing that just helped situate things and make more sense of them.
That's wonderful. So do you see a very clear future for yourself, Kristina? Do you see a very clear path? What's your intention with your retreats? And
so that's such a fascinating question, because in some ways I can say absolutely yes, in some ways I can say absolutely no, because increasingly my life is founded on being in a state of surrender and just being open to what I am led to, what I am guided to. And so in that sense, that is absolutely clear to me. I know that I'm called to work with groups. I know that what's happening in groups is powerful and just, increasingly beyond my understanding. And I know that I want to do that in many different ways. So I want to do large group channeling. I want to do retreats in different locations. In terms of having an absolutely clear plan about that, I'm continuing to trust that it's going to be revealed.
Yes. And I think we're all very much on the same path. We think we know what our direction is, but sometimes we get these incredible twists and turns, and we find out the universe has a way of sort of just always pushing us back to where we need to go.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, well, it sounds amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience today. We're really excited about your meditations and your channels. I just got this flash. I was like, I think we're going to be doing this a couple of times a year, because you'll have to come back and update us and tell us what's going on, because I'm sure you'll get some really interesting twists, and it'll also be really great to let people know what you're doing. And again, I'll put the links in the description box below, so that if you want to get in contact with Kristina, she's there. I, recommend going to one of her day retreats, which is a really nice way to spend a Saturday or a Sunday, I bet, getting yourself out of your regular routine. It's part of it. And just being good to yourself and surrounding yourself with like-minded people and knowing you're not alone.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So thanks very much, Kristina, and thank you for sharing. We really appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Anita. It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. Thanks.